Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon so that you never miss any video lesson from RAU'S IAS Study Circle. Join the official Telegram channel of RAU'S IAS Study Circle to stay updated and get all the materials on the Telegram. The link to the channel can be found in the description box.
Now all of us understand the importance of optional subject in overall scheme of UPSC Civil Services examination. And if you're confused about which optional subject to choose, how to find the best teachers and academic support for your optional papers, and above all, how to prepare for the same during these difficult times, RAU'S IAS has best solution for your optional subject related problems. We are conducting optional orientation sessions on 22nd and 29th of May 2021, in which you can learn from the RAU'S IAS teachers about how to prepare for the optional subjects and how are we going to help you in scoring your best in the mains examination. The optional batches are starting from 4th of June 2021 via live online classes. Consider this as a call to all of those who wish to completely cover the optional subject by December 2021. This will ensure timely coverage of optional subject, and then you can focus your attention completely on prelims from January or February 2022 and keep revising the optional subject till you appear for the mains examination. RAU'S IAS is offering guidance for political science, public administration, history, sociology, geography, economics and psychology from Delhi, Jaipur and Bangalore centers. In the description of the video, there is a link which you can use to register yourself for the orientation for the respective optional subject session. We at RAU'S IAS are committed to give you the best guidance and academic support to excel in civil services examination. Join the orientation and kickstart your mains optional subject preparation from a team of best teachers in the arena. Let us now begin the discussion.
Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, an answer to what, why and how of newspaper reading from our UPSC examination perspective. Now today we have taken up the New Delhi edition of the Hindu newspaper dated 15th May, and the news to be discussed has been displayed on your screen and timestamping for the same has been provided in the description box below. So on this note, let's start our today's discussion. Now this article highlights about certain learnings which we can derive from the present medical emergency. And in this regard, it mentions about the key principles to be driven home. Adherence to them would have mitigated the traumatic fallout of the present situation which exists in India as of now. So this article must be seen primarily from the mains perspective, especially focusing on the aspect of universal health coverage, as this aspect was also discussed few days back, especially with respect to the National Health Service of Britain. So here one of the four learnings which the author in this article highlights is regarding having a universal health coverage. Now one of the main aspect of this universal health coverage is that it should be delinked from a citizen's income. So irrespective of the income, every citizen of India should be entitled to a universal health coverage. Now this aspect of universal health coverage was also discussed in detail in a report provided by the high level group as a part of 12th Planning Commission report. So we will go through some of the important suggestions and highlights which has been provided by this particular recommendations of the high level group, especially pertaining to universal health coverage in India. Now here we'll also take a look about National Health Service of Britain as it was implemented post World War in 1948, as Britain thought it necessary to implement such a service, especially for its citizens to overcome any kind of medical emergency. Now the second learning which this article highlights is the fact that we must rely on science, and the government should also focus on scientific facts and not merely on myths. So, relying on scientific data is crucial to understand any medical emergency or any kind of scientific understanding. And relying on scientific details will help the country to come out of any crisis. The third learning highlighted in this article is regarding the importance of data credibility. Now here the article says that the government must not suppress or hide data, be it with respect to economic crisis, any kind of medical crisis or any other data. The government will not be able to formulate a plan for a proper recovery. So it is in this regard a proper data credibility is necessary. And the last learnings which this article says is regarding improving the lives of the poor and downtrodden who are impacted the most during any kind of crisis, as these are the people who do not form part of the formal economy, and since their earnings depend mostly on daily wages or an informal source of income, hence these are the people who are actually impacted on ground. Hence they must be provided with certain basic kind of income, or at least with certain food grains as provided under National Food Security Scheme. So in this article, let us understand about this aspect of universal health coverage and also what learnings can be taken from Britain. Now this topic, as mentioned, becomes important primarily from the perspective of the mains examination under GS paper 2 and gets covered under the aspect of social justice. Now under social justice, you can go through this news, especially with respect to government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, welfare schemes for the vulnerable section of the population by center and states, and the performance of these schemes, mechanism, laws, institutions and bodies constituted for protection and betterment of these vulnerable sections, issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to health, education and human resources, and also issues relating to poverty and hunger. So this article caters to this wide section of the syllabus provided under GS paper 2. So on this note, let's start our discussion by understanding the first learning, especially with respect to universal health coverage. Now it's important to understand about universal health coverage, and here I would like to say that as of now, India does not have any universal health coverage scheme. So the World Health Organization states that universal health coverage means that all people have access to the health services they need. So the basic definition does not differentiate between the incomes of people, as it says all people can have access to the health services which they need, when and where they need them, without financial hardship. It further says that it includes full range of essential health services from health promotion to prevention, treatment, rehabilitation and palliative care. Further, the WHO highlights that currently at least half of the people in the world do not receive the health services which they need at actual times, and about 100 million people are pushed into extreme poverty each year because of out-of-pocket spending on health. So there can be said to be a direct relationship between spending on health by any family or community, especially with respect to their annual income. And we all know that there are a number of families who do not have requisite income to spend on health when actually needed. And it is here where the universal health coverage by different governments comes into picture or become important. Another important part highlighted with respect to WHO is that universal health coverage should be based on strong people-centered primary health care centers, and good health systems are rooted in the communities they serve. They focus not only on preventing and treating diseases and illness, but also on helping to improve well-being and quality of life. So this aspect needs to be understood here, that the point of universal health coverage is not only to prevent or treat any particular kind of disease, but the focus should also be on improving well-being of the person and also to improve quality of life of a particular individual or family. And it is here where steps taken by various governments of the world becomes important towards universal health coverage. Now I've taken these screenshots again from WHO, and it states that over 930 million people spend at least 10% of their household income on healthcare. So a direct relation between income and spending on health. Further, it says that 100 million people are driven into poverty each year through out-of-pocket health spending. And also the fact that half of world's population do not have access to healthcare which they need in times. So here the article mentions about the Britain's National Health Service, as it is a kind of universal health coverage and it is not dependent on a person's income. Now, the three important aspects of National Health Service of Britain are that the services help everyone, healthcare is free, and the fact that care will be provided based on need rather than ability to pay. Now, this becomes one of the most crucial and important part of National Health Service, which was established in 1948 after Second World War. So, regarding the British National Health Service, it highlights that it was launched by the then Minister of Health in at least post-war government at the Park Hospital in Manchester in July 1948. And the fact that NHS is based on three ideas which we have discussed right now. That is, the services help everyone, healthcare is free, and care will be provided based on need and not on ability to pay. And based on these aspects, the article highlights that the Government of India must come up with its own universal health coverage. And as stated, so far we do not have a universal health coverage. So when I say that we do not have a universal health coverage, does not mean that the idea was not pondered upon or not thought upon. And this idea was presented in a report titled High Level Expert Group Report on Universal Health Coverage for India, and it was instituted by the then Planning Commission of India. Now, the people in the Planning Commission understood India's need, and thereby they provided a sort of a definition with respect to India's universal health coverage as to how India's universal health coverage scheme should be. And here they focused on the aspect of equity, that is, universal health coverage for all. So it says that ensuring equitable access for all Indians resident in any part of the country, regardless of their income level, social status, gender, caste, or religion. So this aspect of equity, also highlighted in Article 14 of the Indian Constitution, can be clearly visible in the ideas proposed by this high-level expert group report on universal health coverage for India. As it says that it aims to provide equitable access for all citizens resident in any part of the country, regardless of their income, social status, gender, caste, or religion. So we see aspects of not only Article 14 but also Article 15. That is, no kind of discrimination was proposed as per this report with respect to universal health coverage. And it says to affordable, accountable, appropriate health services of assured quality, which is that of promotive, preventive, curative, and rehabilitative, as well as public health services addressing the wider determinants of health delivered to individuals and populations, with the government being the guarantor and enabler. So here another aspect becomes important, that the government becomes the guarantor and also the enabler to provide universal health coverage to all citizens of India. So this is how this report defined universal health coverage. Now this report also mentioned about 10 principles which guided the formulation of universal health coverage in India. These were universality, equity, non-exclusion and non-discrimination as part of Article 15, and this becomes part of Article 14, comprehensive care, that is rational and of good quality, financial protection, especially for those who cannot afford proper health services in time, protection of patients' rights which guarantee appropriateness of care, patient's choice, portability and continuity of care, consolidated and strengthened public health provisioning, accountability and transparency, community participation, and putting health in people's hands. So these were the 10 principles which guided this high-level group to formulate universal health coverage for Indians. So if a question in your mains examination is asked regarding universal health coverage, then you can highlight these important points as has been mentioned in the report. Now this report also mentions about the aspect of vision. It says that every citizen of India should be entitled to essential primary, secondary and tertiary healthcare services that will be guaranteed by the central government. So it talks about certain healthcare services which are guaranteed by the central government for all citizens. It further says that the range of essential healthcare services should be offered as national health package, and this national health package should be determined by medical experts. So this national health package primarily comprises of essential healthcare services. So, as per the report, the national health package should comprise of the essential healthcare services which shall be determined by a group of medical experts as to be appointed by the government. And this national health package will cover all common conditions and high impact cost effective healthcare interventions to reduce health related mortality and disability. So again, with respect to national health package containing essential healthcare services, the idea is to reduce mortality, that is to ensure less number of people dies because of any emergency, and to reduce disability among citizens. So according to their vision, universal health coverage is for entitlement for every citizen, and it should also come with a national health package which guarantees access to an essential health package including cashless inpatient and outpatient care provided free of cost, and this includes primary care, secondary care and tertiary care. And regarding choice of facilities, people are free to choose between public sector facilities and contracted in private providers. Now again, this is the vision as highlighted in this report and so far has not been implemented in the way as has been provided in the report. Now this report also mentions about certain expected outcomes if universal health coverage is implemented for all citizens. First of all, as we have seen, it mentions about greater equity. Through greater equity, it will lead to improved health outcomes. Further, it also mentions about an efficient, accountable and transparent health system. And it is here where the importance of scientific data or health data becomes important for the government to formulate schemes. Further, it also says that a healthy population will result in greater productivity and will overall reduce poverty in the country. With greater productivity, there would be increased job opportunities and overall there would be greater financial protection for such people. So this was the expected outcomes as highlighted by the report with respect to universal health coverage. So regarding the expected outcome, the report stated that India can aspire to achieve greater equity by bridging health disparities and inequities. It mentioned about creation of a strong and robust health policy platform through the proposed scaling up of public spending and expansion in health service provisioning is likely to improve health outcomes. So here again it mentions about creating a strong and robust health policy platform, and this can be done by scaling up public spending in the health sector. So scaling up public spending as a part of budget in the health sector becomes very important to create a proper health ecosystem in India. It further says that adoption of an integrated primary health approach is expected to result in a gradual but significant reduction in overall disease burden across the country. Next, it states that a strengthened health system under the universal health coverage will result in better health literacy for Indians through improved health promotion, healthier behaviors and lifestyles. It further mentions about greater emphasis on the use of information technology to link healthcare networks, as it will improve health surveillance in the country with the establishment of a health information system that will generate valuable data on various health and disease trends and outcomes. So it mentions about establishing a health information system to improve health surveillance in India, as the system will generate valuable data on various health and disease trends and outcomes in India. It further says that improvement of health infrastructure in India and expansion of health workforce is also expected to generate almost 7 million jobs in the sector, especially for young people and women. It further says that the provision with respect to free healthcare and medicines for both inpatient as well as outpatient care through financial protection can reduce spending on medical expenses. And lastly, it states that the healthy population in turn can contribute to economic growth through increased productivity and higher earnings. So these can be said to be some of the expected outcomes with respect to implementing a universal health coverage in India. Now, on the aspect of architecture for universal health coverage, this report has highlighted recommendations in 6 critical areas which are essential to augment the capacity of India's health system, as this will also fulfill the vision of universal health coverage as envisaged by this particular report. So, these 6 critical areas as highlighted are: first, health financing and financial protection; second, health service norms; third, human resources for health; fourth, community participation and citizen engagement; fifth, access to medicines, vaccines, and technology; and sixth, management and institutional reforms. So, these are the 6 critical areas which this report has highlighted as reforms in these areas will augment or improve the capacity of India's healthcare infrastructure. Now, based on these visions and architecture, let's go through some of the important recommendations of this particular report. So, the first recommendation is that the government, that is central government along with state government, should increase public expenditures on health to at least 2.5% by the end of 12th plan and to at least 3% of GDP by 2022. Now, in the comment section, you can tell me that by which year did the 12th plan end, as such questions can be asked in your prelims examination. The report further highlights that the government must ensure availability of free essential medicines, and this can be done by increasing public spending on drug procurement. So again, public spending on health overall, and also specifically there's also need to increase public spending on drug procurement. Now, another principle highlighted here is that the report says that general taxation should be used as a principal source of healthcare financing. And apart from this can be complemented or added by additional mandatory deductions for healthcare from certain salaried individuals and taxpayers, either as a proportion of taxable income or as a proportion of their salary. So either ways, government can use these methods to augment resource for healthcare financing. Further, the report has asked the government not to levy any sector specific taxes for financing the healthcare infrastructure in India, and also not to levy any fees of any kind for use of healthcare services under the universal health coverage. Now, another recommendation is with respect to transfer to states, especially regarding specific purpose transfers. So it says that the government must introduce specific purpose transfers to equalize the levels of per capita public spending on health across different states. Now, this is because revenue of states differ, as there are certain states which have better revenue or better earnings, but there are certain states which do not have better earnings as compared to other states. So here, such specific purpose transfer will equalize or offset per capita public spending on health across different states having different revenue or different earnings. Another important aspect with respect to state financing is that the report says that the central government must accept flexible and differential norms for allocating finances to states, as it will help the states to respond in a much better way with respect to physical, socio-cultural and other differentials and diversities across their districts. Now, this report mentions about certain important aspects whereby certain aspects of healthcare spending should be at least 70% of healthcare expenditures. Now, here it says that expenditures on primary healthcare, including general health information and promotion, curative services at the primary level, screening for risk factors at the population level, and cost-effective treatment targeted towards specific risk factors should account for at least 70% of all healthcare expenditures. Now, another important aspect highlighted by the report is that it says not to use insurance companies or any other independent agents to purchase healthcare services on behalf of the government. Now, this aspect has also been highlighted in this article, whereby it states that the aspect of universal health coverage should not be equated with the aspect of insurance. And hereby it says that the purchases of all healthcare services under universal health coverage system should be undertaken either directly by the central government or by the state governments or through the departments of health or by any governmental autonomous agency established for this purpose. So the directive or the recommendation is not to involve private sector, especially with respect to purchase of all healthcare services under universal health coverage. Further, it states that all government funded insurance schemes should over time be integrated with the universal health coverage system. And hereby it states that all health insurance cards should in due course be replaced by national health entitlement cards. Now another recommendation is with respect to Rashtriya Swasth Bima Yojana. As the report says that as a part of UHC operation, this scheme should be transferred to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. The recommendation says that technical and other capacities developed by Ministry of Labour for Rashtriya Swasth Bima Yojana should be leveraged as the core of UHC operations and must be transferred to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare. Now regarding Rashtriya Swasth Bima Yojana, it was launched by Ministry of Labour and Employment and it provides health insurance coverage for below poverty line families. Now the objective is to provide protection to BPL households from financial liabilities which arises out of health shocks and which also involves hospitalization. Now regarding sharing of the burden, majority of financing, that is about 75%, is provided by the central government of India and the remaining 25% is paid by respective state government. However, for special states, this ratio is 90:10. That is 90% provided by central government and the remaining 10% to be provided by those special state governments. Thus, these are some of the important recommendations as provided by this particular report on universal health coverage. So this article primarily becomes important with respect to universal health coverage, especially for India. And in this regard, we have gone through in detail about the report submitted by a high-level group. Now, questions in your mains examination can be asked with respect to universal health coverage as medical emergence considering the present circumstances. And as already stated, that this topic becomes important as part of GS paper 2. So with this discussion, let's move to the next article. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 8. It says 21 members of vulnerable tribes infected. Activists warn of rapid spread among isolated communities in rural Odisha. Now from your examination perspective, you need to know about the PVTGs or particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Now this news says that of the 62 tribal groups residing in Odisha, 13 are recognized as PVTGs. These are Birhor, Bondo, Didai, Dongriya Kond, Juangs, Kharias, Kutia Kond, Lanjia Soras, Lodhas, Mankidiyas, Paudi Bhuyans, Saura and Chuktiya Bhunjia. So these are the 13 PVTGs of Odisha. And this list is provided by Ministry of Tribal Affairs under Government of India. So this news says that according to the 2011 census, Odisha's population share of country's total tribal population was 9%. However, the tribals constitute 22.85% of state's population. Now, the Government of India has provided certain criteria to identify the PVTGs. These criteria includes pre-agricultural level of technology. That is, these sections of the society practice pre-agricultural level of technology. They have low levels of literacy. They are economic backward and they have a declining or a stagnant population. So these are the criteria to define any community or any tribal group as part of PVTG. Now this particular information highlights that tribal communities live in about 15% of country's landmass in various ecological and geoclimatic conditions ranging from plains to forest, hills and inaccessible areas. They encompass a wide diversity of cultures, system of self-governance and livelihood systems and are also provided special protection by Schedule 5 and 6 of the Constitution of India. It further states that while some of the tribal communities have adopted a mainstream way of life at one end of the spectrum, there are other tribal groups who are characterized by forest-based livelihoods, pre-agriculture level of existence, stagnant or declining population, extremely low literacy and a subsistence economy. Now, these tribal groups are 75 in number, that is, there are total 75 PVTGs in India who resides in 17 states and 1 union territory. And this union territory is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So these have been identified and categorized as particularly vulnerable tribal groups, earlier known as primitive tribal groups. Now, regarding the PVTGs of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, these are Great Andamanese, Jarawas, Ongees, Sentinelese, and Shompenes. Now, you must remember these names as questions can be asked with respect to PVTGs. Now, let's take up this question asked by UPSC in the year 2019. The question was, consider the following statements about particularly vulnerable tribal groups in India. Options were, first, PVTGs resides in 18 states and 1 union territory. Second, a stagnant or declining population is one of the criteria for determining the PVTG status. Now, we have seen that this particular statement is correct. Third, there are 95 PVTGs officially notified in the country so far. We do not know. Fourth, Irregular and Konda Reddy tribes are included in the list of PVTGs. Now, in these type of statement based questions, at least there is one statement which might be wrong considering the options, as the options only provide for 3 options. So here you need to know that which of these 3 is actually wrong. Now, to know this, let's go through this particular scheme of Ministry of Tribal Affairs, namely the development of particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Now, this scheme is specifically for the PVTG population as the name suggests, and also for their development. The scheme covers the 75 identified PVTGs in 18 states and Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So it mentions about the total number of PVTGs identified by the Government of India, which is 75. And these PVTGs resides in 18 states and 1 Union Territory, namely Andaman and Nicobar Islands. So based on this information, this statement becomes correct. However, this statement becomes incorrect. So if you go through these options, you see that option 3 is provided as part of A, as part of B, and also as part of D. Hence, these options can be ruled out. So what remains is C. Hence, C becomes the correct answer. So here the 4th option is also correct, namely the Irregular and Konda Reddy tribes are included in the list of PVTGs. Now, another question asked in the year 2019 was, under which schedule of the Constitution of India can the transfer of tribal land to private parties for mining be declared null and void? Options were 3rd schedule, 5th schedule, 9th schedule, and 12th schedule. Here clearly the correct answer was 5th schedule, that is B. So we see questions have been asked not only with respect to 5th schedule but also with respect to PVTGs. So in this regard, let's also go through this particular scheme of Ministry of Tribal Affairs for the development of particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Now, this particular scheme is a centrally sponsored scheme and has a provision of 100% central assistance to these 18 states and Union Territory of Andaman and Nicobar Islands, where these 75 communities identified as PVTGs reside. Now, the funds in the scheme are released under 2 major components. Number 1 as grant in aid, and second for the creation of capital assets. So this particular scheme operates as a gap filling intervention targeted specifically for the upliftment of such communities. And a part of the same, state governments in which these PVTGs resides undertakes projects that are tailored to cater to sectors like education, health, and livelihood schemes for these vulnerable groups. Now, it further says that the scheme of development of PVTG aims at their socio-economic development in a comprehensive manner, however, while retaining their culture and heritage. So, the financial assistance which is provided to the states and UT under the scheme are for activities such as education of PVTGs, housing for them, agricultural development, animal husbandry, strengthening of infrastructure through construction of community assets, installation of non-conventional sources of energy for lighting purposes, social security for PVTGs, any other innovative activity meant for the comprehensive development of these PVTGs. It further states that in order to ensure effectiveness of the scheme, state governments have been given the flexibility of utilizing the funds using the gaps identified through baseline surveys. It further says that emphasis is also being given to micro-plan approach through formulation of conservation cum development plans for ensuring conservation of culture and traditional practices of PVTGs. Further, it also says that physical progress of works approved under the scheme is monitored regularly, and the impact assessment of the scheme has been undertaken by Ministry and also by Niti Aayog. Now here Ministry refers to Ministry of Tribal Affairs. Thus this scheme with respect to PVTGs becomes important, and questions in your upcoming prelims can be asked especially with respect to these particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Now from your prelims perspective, this topic can be asked as part of Indian geography, Indian polity and governance, and also part of social sector initiatives. Whereas in your mains, this topic gets covered under GS paper 1, especially with respect to salient features of society and diversity of India, and aspects of poverty and developmental issues and their problems and remedies. Further, this topic also gets covered under GS paper 2 regarding government policies and interventions for development in various sectors, welfare schemes for the vulnerable sections of the population including PVTG, issues relating to development and management of social sector services relating to their health, education, human resources, etc., and also issues relating to poverty and hunger. So, the topic of PVTGs can be asked even in your mains examination under GS paper 1 as well as GS paper 2. So, in this news, you need to know about the PVTGs, the developmental scheme, which is a centrally sponsored scheme, and the criteria for identifying the particularly vulnerable tribal groups. And you must know that there are 75 PVTGs residing in 18 states and 1 union territory, that is Andaman and Nicobar Islands. With this, let's move to the next news analysis. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 1. It says, US slider turtles pose a threat in Northeast. Herpetologists have warned that the cute pet could turn nasty for 29 native species of turtles and tortoise in India. Now, herpetologists are those who study amphibians and reptiles. So, this news mentions about a red-eared slider, which is a turtle of US origin, which is threatening to invade the natural water bodies across the Northeast, which is home to 21 of the 29 vulnerable native Indian species of freshwater turtles and tortoises. So, it says that the red-eared slider derives its name from red stripes around the part where its ears would be and from its ability to slide quickly off any surface into water. It highlights that large number of American turtles are found in areas around Guwahati, Aizawl in Mizoram, Karnataka and in Gujarat. It says that the red-eared slider is a subspecies indigenous to the southern United States and also to part of Mexico. And this species has been reported to be introduced to the wild outside its natural range, including various countries and regions in Asia, Europe, Australia and even Africa as a result of release of unwanted pets from United States. So, this turtle is well known as a successful invasive species and has been regarded as one of the world's worst invasive alien species. So, since this species is present in the northeastern region, hence the presence of this species is vulnerable to the native Indian species of freshwater turtles and tortoise. Now, regarding the reason for concern, it says that the turtle species could invade into the habitat of indigenous turtle species of India, and 72% of the turtle and tortoise species are found in the northeastern part of the country. It further says that the red-eared slider is included in the list of world's 100 most invasive species published by International Union for the Conservation of Nature. So from an examination perspective, you must remember this particular name and the fact that it is indigenous to United States. Now, another reason why the red-eared slider or the American turtle is very dangerous because they compete with the native turtles for food, nesting and basking space, and also for hiding places. Another aspect is that the native turtles, that is the Indian turtles, will have no immunity to parasites and disease carried by these red-eared sliders or the American turtles. Now, the fact is that turtles can live more than 20 years. So, if these red-eared sliders are set free, then they pose a threat to the native species of turtles, especially for a long time, in the areas of Brahmaputra and other river ecosystem in the northeastern India. Now, this topic becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective, and questions can be asked especially in the section of environmental ecology and biodiversity. The next news to be discussed appears on page number 14. It says exports surge in April on low base effect. This news highlights that due to low base effect, exports in April 2021 recorded a growth rate of 195.72%. Further, even the trade deficit also widened from $6.76 billion to $15.10 billion. So in this regard, you need to know about base effect. And this is because of this question asked by UPSC in the prelims of 2011. It says a rapid increase in the rate of inflation is sometimes attributed to the base effect. What is base effect? Options are A. It is the impact of drastic deficiency in supply due to failure of crops. B. It is the impact of the surge in demand due to rapid economic growth. C. It is the impact of price levels of previous year on the calculation of inflation rate. And D. None of the statements A, B and C given above are correct in this context. So in this regard, we need to know about base effect. Now let us understand this through an example. Suppose we have taken the year 2005 as the base year, and these are the values with respect to exports. So if we compare the value of exports of 2010 as compared to 2005, we see that there is a twofold increase or 2 times increase if we compare from 2005. So for the year 2015, we see that there is a 4 times increase in exports. Now if we change the base year from 2005 to 2010, especially for the year 2015. So when the base year is taken at 2010 for the year 2015, then we see with respect to value of exports, there is only an increase of 2 times. However, if the base year was 2005, then the increase in value of export was 4 times. So this is with respect to base effect. It says that the base effect is the effect that choosing a different reference point, such as different past year or a value, for a comparison between 2 data points can have on the result of comparison. Further, the base effect is the distortion in a monthly inflation figure that results from abnormally high or low levels of inflation in the same month a year ago. So in this context, the correct answer here becomes C. It says that the base effect is the impact of the price levels of previous year on the calculation of inflation rate. So this is with respect to base effect, and you must know about base effect as it can impact the value of inflation, export, import, etc. So if we change the base year, then what can be the possible impacts? It says that using a different reference or a base for comparison can lead to a large variation in the ratio or percentage comparisons between data points. Further, change in base effect can lead to distortion in comparisons and also deceptive results. However, it states that if well understood and accounted for, then such change in base year can be used to improve our understanding of data and the underlying processes that generate them. Further, the base effect is most pointed out when discussing comparisons using time series data. That is data which can be seen through different timelines, where the raw data value at one point in time is being compared to another chosen point. For example, data of 2010 is being compared with respect to data of 2012, 2014, 2016 and so on. It then says that choosing an inappropriate basis for comparison or ignoring the base effect in a time index can lead to a distorted perception of the magnitude or rate of change of the current point in a data series. So this point has already been highlighted, that change in base effect can lead to distortion in comparisons and can also lead to deceptive results, such as a deceptive result in change in inflation or even a deceptive result with respect to economic growth. So from your prelims perspective, you need to know the impact of change in base year, as a question has already been asked by UPSC with respect to base effect. Now this topic becomes important primarily from your prelims perspective and gets covered under the aspect of economic and social development, especially with respect to Indian economy. So with this discussion, let's move to the question for the day. Now based on our discussion, this becomes your practice question for the day. It says, consider the following statements with respect to particularly vulnerable tribal groups. Options are, first, the criteria for identifying PVTGs are pre-agricultural level of technology, low level of literacy, economic backwardness, declining or stagnant population. Second, Development of particularly vulnerable tribal groups is a centrally sponsored scheme. Third, Jarawas and Shompens are PVTGs from Odisha. So the question is, which of the statements given above is are correct? Options are A, 2 and 3 only, B, 1 and 2 only, C, 1 and 3 only, and D, none of the above. Now coming to the answer of yesterday, the question was, consider the following statements about Assam Accord. It completely barred Bangladeshis who came to Assam after 1955 from voting. No, this is incorrect. Second, it provided for deportation of all such Bangladeshis who entered Assam post 1971. Yes, this is correct. So the question was, which of the statements given above are correct? So here the correct answer becomes B, that is 2 only. So with this discussion, we come to an end to today's analysis. Thank you for watching DNS.